Hey guys, we're here with like some new again Urobuchi novel. It's like a light novel short story that's like in the same universe as Saya no Uta, which I haven't read. I'll get around to it. And yeah, so there's like no music, so I'm just gonna be reading this out loud. Let me put some on. By my boy Kevin Macleod. Macleod? I don't think it's McCloud. I think it's McLeod. Because his music's loud, but it's not loud. So there's that Windows Media Player. Because I use good stuff. So this is getting Urobuchi, I think, right? When a traveler in north central Massachusetts takes the wrong fork at the junction of the Aylesbury Pike that just beyond Dean's Corners, he comes upon a lonely and curious country. The ground gets higher, the briar-bordered stone walls press closer and closer against the ruts of the dusty, curving road. The trees of the frequent forest belt seem too large, and the wild weeds, brambles, and grasses attain a luxuriance not often found in settled regions. At the same time, the planted fields appear singularly few and barren, while the sparsely scattered houses wear a surprising, for the Z, because again Urobuchi looks pretty special, uniform aspect of age, squalor, and dilapidation. I said that right. Without knowing why, one hesitates to ask directions from the gnarled, solitary figures find now and on crumbling doorsteps or in the sloping rock-strewn meadows. Those figures are so silent and furtive that one feels somehow confronted by forbidden things, with which it would be better to have nothing to do. When a rise in the road brings the mountains in view above the deep woods, the feelings of strange uneasiness is increased. The summits are too rounded and symmetrical to give a sense of comfort and naturalness. Sometimes the sky silhouettes with a special clearance the queer circles of tall stone pillars with which most of them are crowned. I have a newfound respect for audiobook readers. I don't listen to audiobooks, but just that one paragraph is pretty tough. Gorges and ravines of problematic depth intersect the way, and the crude wooden bridges always seem of dubious safety. When the road dips again, there are stretches of marshland that one instinctively dislikes, and indeed almost fears at evening when unseen whippoorwills chatter and the fireflies come out in an abnormal profusion to dance to the raucous, creepily insistent rhythms of stridently piping bullfrogs. The thin, shining line of the Miskatonic's upper reaches has an oddly serpent-like suggestion as it winds closer to the feet of the domed hills among which it rises. As the hills draw near, one heeds their wooded sides more than their stone-crowned tops. Those sides loom up so darkly and precipitously, is that right? That one wishes they would keep their distance, but there is no road by which to escape them. Across the covered bridge, one sees a small village huddled between the stream and the vertical slope of a round mountain, and wonders at the cluster of rotting bramble roofs bespeaking an earlier architectural period than that of the neighboring region. It is not reassuring to see, on a closer glance, that most of the houses are deserted and falling to ruin, and the broken steepled church now harbors the one slovenly mercantile establishment of the hamlet. One dreads to trust the tenebrous tunnel of the bridge, if there's no way to avoid it. Once again, it's hard to prevent the impression of a faint, malign odor about the village street, as the massive mold and decay of centuries. I mean, it's massed, but saying like massive sounds cool, you know? It's always a relief to get clear of the place, and to follow the narrow road around the base of the hills and across the level country beyond it till it rejoins at the Aylesbury Pike. Afterward, one sometimes learned that one has been through Dunwich. Oh yeah, this isn't by getting Urobuchi, by the way. It's Lovecraft, the Dunwich Horror. It's in public domain. There's a read through for April Fools. Let you on the joke pretty early. OBS is recording everything, right? Yeah. I have to use display capture since Chrome's weird. Also zoomed in so like you can't see my Google Chrome name or my taskbar. Or my desktop, which is, good. Like, you could see through the desktop. It's a picture from Mahoyo. It's Elko, like, shooting of the beam. Anyway, this is a long story and it's late at night. It's 4:30 and I'm tired. Kind of need to sneeze, but I don't need to sneeze. Outsiders visit Dunwich as seldom as possible, and since a certain season of horror, all the signboards pointing towards it have been taken down. The scenery, judged by any ordinary aesthetic canon, is more than commonly beautiful, yet there's no influx of artists or summer tourists. 2 centuries ago, when talk of witch blood, Satan worship, and strange forest presence were not laughed at, it was the custom to give reasons for avoiding the locality. In our sensible age, since the Dunwich horror of 1928 was hushed up by those who had the towns and the world's welfare at heart, people shun it without knowing exactly why. Perhaps one reason, though it could not be applied to uninformed strangers, is that the natives are now repellently decadent, having gone far along that path of retrogression so common in many New England backwaters. They have come to form a race by themselves, with a well-defined mental and physical stigmata of degeneracy and inbreeding. The average of their intelligence is woefully low. How do you say that? Whistle? Like, I've seen that word written before, but is it just whistle? I mean, it's just wild, but fancy. Their annals reek of overt viciousness and half-hidden murders, incests, indeed of almost unnameable violence, and perversity. The old gentry, I don't think that's gentry, because it's a G, and G is gentry, representing the 2 or 3 Armurgius, is that right? Families which came from Salem in 1692, kept somewhat above the general level of decay, but many branches are sunk into the sordid populace so deeply that only their names remain as a key to their origin that they disgrace. Some of the Whateleys, Whately, best girl, and bishops still send their eldest sons to Harvard and Miskatonic. I said that right. Though their sons seldom return to the moldering gambrel roofs under which they and their ancestors were born. I just studied, I didn't misspeak it. No one, even those who have the facts concerning the recent horror, could say just what is the matter with Dunwich. The old legends speak of unhallowed rites and conclaves of the Indians, amidst which they called forbidden shapes of shadow out of the great rounded hills, like wild orgistic prayers that were answered by loud crackings and rumblings from the ground below. In 1747, the Reverend Abijah Hoadley, I think it's Abijah, or maybe it's like one of those silent letters things, newly came to the Congregational Church of Dunwich Village, preached a memorial sermon on the close presence of Satan and his imps, in which he said, "It must be allowed that the blasphemies of the infernal train of demons are matters of too common knowledge to be denied. The cursive voices of Azazel," hey, I played Isaac, of Buzrael, of Beelzebub, I've always said Beelzebub, but that's not how you say it, and Belial, being heard from underground by above a score of credible witnesses now living. I myself did not more than a fortnight ago. Fortnite? What? Lovecraft was just... It was all an ad to play Fortnite! I actually started playing that with a friend of mine recently. Playing Battle Royales with friends is actually fun. I played PUBG alone. And I was like, yeah, I mean, this is kind of cool, I guess. Anyway. I go catch a very plain discourse of evil powers in the hill behind my house, wherein there's a rattling and rolling, groaning, screeching, and hissing, such as no things of this earth could raise up, which must needs have come from those caves that only black magic can discover, and only the divil unlock. Mr. Hoadley disappeared soon after delivering the sermon, but the text, printed in Springfield, is still extant. Notices in the hills continue to be reported from year to year, still form a puzzle to geologists and physiographers. Other traditions tell of foul odors near the hill-crowning circles of stone pillars, and of rushing eerie presences to be heard faintly at certain hours from stated points at the bottom of the great ravines, while still others try to explain the Devil's Hop Yard, a bleak, blasted hillside where no tree, shrub, or grass blade, what did I say? will grow. Then, too, the natives are mortally afraid of the numerous whippoorwills which grow vocal on warm nights. It is vowed that the birds are psychopomps lying in wait for the souls of the dying. They time their eerie cries in unison with the sufferer's struggling breath. If they can catch the fleeing soul when it leaves the body, they instantly flutter away, chittering a demoniac? Do people say that? Not just demonic? Laughter. But if they fail, they subside gradually into a disappointed silence. These tales, of course, are obsolete and ridiculous, because they come down from very old times. Dunwich is indeed ridiculously old, older by far than any of the communities within 30 miles of it. South of the village, one may still spy the cellar walls and chimney of the ancient bishop house, which was built before 1700. Whistle, the ruins of the mill in the falls, built in 1806, formed the most modern piece of architecture to be seen. Industry did not flourish here. The 19th century factory movement proved short-lived. Oldest of all are the great rings of rough-hewn stone columns on the hilltops. These are more generally attributed to the Indians than to the settlers. Deposits of skull and bones, found within these circles and around the sizable table-like bond of Sentinel Hill. I always said Sensual or something like that. No, it's Sentinel. I mean, duh. That's how you read it. Sustained the popular belief that such spots were once the burial places of the Pocumtucks. Even though many anthologists, disregarding the absurd improbability of such a theory, persisted in believing their remains Caucasian. Okay, exposition's done. How many chapters is this? It was in the township of Dunwich, in a large and partly inhabited farmhouse set aside of hillside 4 miles from the village and 1.5 miles from any other dwelling, that Wilbur Whately was born at 5 a.m. on Sunday, the 2nd of February 1913. His mom's best girl. The day was recalled because it was Candlemas, which people in Dunwich curiously observe under another name. Candlemas? Pardon? Because the noises in the hills are sounded, and all the dogs of the countryside have barked persistently through the night before. Less worthy of notice was the fact that the mother was one of the decadent Whateleys, a somewhat deformed, unattractive albino woman of 35, living with an aged and half-insane father about whom the most frightful tales of wizardry had been whispered in his youth. Lavinia Whately, so she's in fake Grand Order and she's like a lolly. She's not like a playable character, but she's best girl, apparently. I can't read Japanese wounds. Lavinia Whately had no known husband, but according to the custom of the region, made no attempt to disavow the child. Concerning the other side of whose ancestry the country folk might, and did, speculate as widely as they chose. On the contrary, she seemed strangely proud of the dark, goatish-looking infant who formed such a contrast to her own sickly and pink-eyed albinism. It was heard to mutter many curious prophecies about its unusual powers and tremendous future. Lavinia was one of those who would apt to mutter such things, for she was a lone creature given to wandering amidst thunderstorms in the hills, and trying to read the great odorous books which her father had inherited through 2 centuries of Whateleys, and which were fast falling to pieces with age and wormholes. She had never been to school, but was filled with disjointed scraps of ancient lore that old Whately had taught her. The remote farmhouse had always been feared because of old Whately's reputation for black magic. That explained death by violence of Mrs. Whately when Lavinia was 12 years old had not helped to make the place popular. Isolated among strange influences, Lavinia was fond of wild and grandiose daydreams and singular occupations, nor was her leisure much taken up by household care in a home from which all standards of order and cleanliness had long since disappeared. There was a hideous screaming which echoed above the hill noises and dogs barking on the night Wilbur was born, but no known doctor or midwife presented at his coming. Neighbors knew nothing of him until a week later, when old Whately drove his sleigh through the snow in Dunwich village and discovered incoherently to the group of loungers at Osborne's general store. There seemed to be a change in the old man, and an element of furtiveness in the clouded brain which subtly transformed him from an object to a subject of fear. Though he was not one to be perturbed by any common family event, amidst it all he showed some trace of the pride later noticed in his daughter. What he said of the child's paternity was remembered by many of the hearers years later. I thought he had a twin too, like Wilbur did. No? Pretty sure? Maybe. We'll get to that probably. I don't care what folks think. If Lavinia's boy looked like his pa, he wouldn't look like nothing you expect. You needn't think the only folks in the folks' hereabouts Lavinia's read some, and has seen some things the most ye only tell about. I calculate her man is as good a husband as he can find this side of Aylesbury. And if you knowed as much about the hills as I do, you wouldn't nest better church well nor hearing. Let me tell you something. Sundays your folks will hear a child of Lavinia's calling his father's name on the top of Sentinel Hill. Was that good? The only person who saw Wilbur Wilbur during the first month of his life were old Zachary Whately of the Undecayed Whateleys and Errol Sawyer's common law wife, Mammy Bishop. Worst medical girl. She's the head below the others. I had to know it. Mammy's visit was how do you say that? Mommy? Because Madoka is mommy because it's awesome, but I think that's Mammy. Because it was frankly one of curiosity, and her subsequent tales did justice to our observations. But Zechariah came to lead a pair of Alderney cows, which old Whately had brought to his son Curtis. This marked the beginning of a course of cattle buying on the part of old Wilbur's family, which ended only in 1928, when the Dunwich horror came and went, and at no time did the ramshackle Whately barn seem overcrowded with livestock. There came a period when people were curious enough to steal up and count the herd that grazed precariously on the steep hillside above the farmhouse. You can never find more than 10 or 12 anemic, bloodless-looking specimens. Evidently, some blight or distemper, perhaps sprung from the unwholesome pasturage. They also have a pastry shop, or the diseased fungi and timbers of the filthy barn, caused a heavy mortality amongst the Whately animals. Odd wounds or sores, having something of an aspect of incisions, seemed to afflict the visible cattle, and once or twice during the earlier months, certain colliers fancied they could discern similar sores about the throats of the grey, unshaven old men and his slatternly, crinkly-haired albino daughter. I hit the pop filter. Sorry. In the spring after Wilbur's birth, Lavinia resumed her customary rambles in the hills, bearing in her misproportioned arms the swarthy child. Public interest in the Whateleys subsided after most of the country folk had seen the baby. No one bothered to comment on the swift development which the newcomer seemed every day to exhibit. Wilbur's growth was indeed phenomenal, for within 3 months of his birth he had attained a size and muscular power not usually found in infants under a full year of age. His motions and even his vocal sounds showed a restraint and deliberateness highly peculiar in an infant. No one was really unprepared when, at 7 months, he began to walk unassisted, with falterings which another month was sufficient to remove. It was somewhat after this time, on Halloween, there's the apostrophe. Why do they do that? I don't know. Etymology, am I right? That great blaze was seen at midnight on the top of Sentinel Hill, where the old table-like stone stands amidst its tumulus of ancient bones. Considerable talk was started with Silas Bishop, of the Undecayed Bishops, mentioned having seen the boy running sturdily up that hill ahead of his mother about an hour before the blaze was remarked. Silas was rounding up a stray heifer, but he nearly forgot his mission when he flittingly spied the 2 figures in the dim light of his lantern. They darted almost noiselessly through the underbrush. The astonished watcher seemed to think they were entirely unclothed. Afterwards, he could not be sure about the boy. He may have had some kind of fringed boat and a pair of dark blue trunks or trousers on. Wilbur was never subsequently seen alive and conscious without complete and tightly buttoned attire, the disarrangement or threatened disarrangement of which almost seemed to fill him with anger and alarm. His contrast with his squalid mother and grandfather in this respect was thought very notable, until the horror of 1928 suggested the most valid of reasons. I think they're repeating 1928 a lot. With this whole Dunwich horror thing. Maybe something happens then. What year was he born? 13? Yeah, 13. Okay. The next January gossips were mildly interesting in the fact that Lavinia's black brat commenced to talk. And at the age of only 11 months, his speech was somewhat remarkable, both because of its difference from the ordinary accents of the region, because it displayed a freedom from infantile lisping of which many children of 3 or 4 might well be proud. The boy was not talkative, yet when he spoke he seemed to reflect some elusive element wholly unpossessed by Dunwich and its denizens. The strangeness did not reside in what he said. Even in the simple idioms he used, it seemed vaguely linked with his intonation. I can't talk. With it, the internal organs that produce the spoken sounds. His facial aspect, too, was remarkable for its maturity. For though he shared his mother and grandfather's chinlessness, his firm and precariously shaped nose, united with the expression on his large, dark, almost Latin eyes to give him an air of quasi-adulthood and well-nigh preternatural intelligence. He was, however, exceedingly ugly despite his appearance of brilliancy, there being something almost goatish or animalistic about his thick lips, large pored yellowish skin, coarse crinkly hair, and oddly elongated ears. He was soon disliked even more decidedly than his mother and grandsire. Okay, it says grandsire. I was like, what's a grandsire? And all conjectures about him were spiced with references of the bygone magic of old Whately. Now the hills once shook when he shrieked the dreadful name of Yog-Sothoth. Yog-Sothoth. In the midst of a circle of stones with a great book open in his arms before him. Ogzab heard the boy. He was always obliged to take various defensive measures against the barking menace. How many chapters is this? I actually have I think, hold on, I actually happened to pick up a copy of, The Call of Cthulhu and Other Weird Stories, which is a list of short stories by Lovecraft. Let me see here in the table of contents. I think, like, all but, like, 2 of his works are in public domain, or maybe all of them. I'm not sure. Well, it's like 70 years after his death, or 95 or something. Where's the table of contents? There we go. Well, 3rd page, I think. Dagon, Randolph Carter. He's in Fate, I think. Neanderthal, there's a cute anime version of that. Call of Cthulhu? The Dunwich Horror is not in here. Okay. So I won't have to skip a chapter then. Okay. Anyway, let's continue. It'd be really awkward if this wasn't in public domain and I just get copyright strike. But there's tons of audiobooks on YouTube of this, so I mean, I assume it's fine. I even looked it up, like, y'all is Lovecraft in public domain. And it's even on the site. Should I call out the site? Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should? I don't know. That won't. But just look at public domain books and you can find it easily. Meanwhile, old Whately continued to buy cattle. Oh, hold on, let me check if I know. 21 minutes. Oh, this is going to take a while. The audiobook seemed to last for about 2 hours, so, yeah. I probably should have chosen more appropriate music for this. But, no, we're just listening to Gymnopedie all the way through. Thanks, Kevin. Old Whately continued to buy cattle without measurably increasing the size of his herd. He also cut timber and began to repair the unused parts of his house. A spacious, peaked roof affair, whose rear end was buried entirely in the rocky hillside. It was three loose-thrown ground floor rooms had always been insufficient for himself and his daughter. There must have been that's a word that comes from prodigy, right? Prodigious reserves of strength in the old man to enable him to accomplish so much hard labor. Well, no, it's not prodigy. Well, yeah, it is. But I don't know. Though he still babbled mentally at times, his carpentry seemed to show the effects of sound calculation. It really began as soon as Wilbur was born. One of the many tool sheds had been put suddenly in order, clapboarded, fitted with a stout, fresh lock. Now, destroying the abandoned upper story of the house, he was a no less thorough craftsman. His mania showed itself only in his tight boarding up of all the windows in the reclaim section. The money declared that it was a crazy thing to bother with the reclamation at all. Less inexplicable was his fitting up of another downstairs room for his new grandson, a room which several callers saw, though no one ever been to the closely boarded up upper story. The chamber he lined with a tall, firm shelving, along which he began gradually to arrange, in apparently careful order, all the rotting ancient books and parts of books which during his own day had been heaped promiscuously. I can't talk! Promiscuously. Close enough. In odd corners of the various rooms. I made some use of them. You could say as he tried to mend a torn black letter page with paste prepared on the rusty kitchen stove. But the boys pretended to make better use of them. He'd have 'em as well said as he kin for they're gonna be all of his learning. It's horrible, but it's actually good. When Wilbur was a year and 7 months old, September of 1914, his size and accomplishments were almost alarming. He had grown as large as a child of 4, was as fluent and incredibly intelligent talker. He ran freely around the fields and hills, accompanied his mother in all of her wanderings. Naomi had pored diligently over the queer pictures and charts in his grandfather's books. While old Whately would instructing, can we have more dialogue? That was fun. And Kate tries? I don't know that word. And through long, hushed afternoons. By this time, the restoration of the house was finished. Those who watched it wondered why one of the upper windows had been made into a solid plank door. There's a window in the rear of the east gable end, close against the hill. No one would imagine why a cleated wooden runway, was built up to it from the ground. About the period of the work's completion, people noticed that the old tool house, tightly locked and windowlessly clapboarded since Wilbur's birth, had been abandoned again. The door swung listlessly open. When Ariel Sawyer once stepped within the cattle-selling tall of old Whately, he was quite discomposed by the singular odor he encountered. Such a stench, he averred, as he had never before smelt in all of his life except the Indian circles on the hills, which could not come from anything sane or of this earth. But then, the homes and sheds of Dunwich folk have never been remarkable for olfactory immaculateness. Kill me. I'm gonna be a laughing stock. Everyone's gonna be like, he can't pronounce words. You guys won't do that, right? The following months were void of visible events, save that everyone swore to a slow but steady increase in the mysterious hill noises. On May Eve of 1915, the tremors which the Aylesbury people felt whistled the following Halloween produced an underground rumbling queerly synchronized with bursts of flames. Them which Whately's doings. From the summit of Sentinel Hill, Wilbur was growing up uncannily, so that he looked like a boy of 10 as he entered his 4th year. He read avidly by himself now, but talked much less than formerly. A settled tactiturnary, I said that right, was absorbing him. For the first time, people began to speak specifically of the dawning look of evil in his goatish face. He would sometimes mutter in unfamiliar jargon, chanted bizarre rhythms which chilled the listener with a sense of unexplainable terror. The aversion displayed towards him by dogs had now become a matter of wider mark. He was obliged to carry a pistol in order to traverse the countryside in safety. His occasional use of the weapon did not enhance his popularity among the owners of canine guardians. Wait, he just kills dogs? I mean, even if they do attack him first, I mean, there's that whole... If you kill a dog in any media, you're a bad person. That's just a rule that exists. Unless it's The Walking Dead Season 2. In which case, Clementine did nothing wrong. That dog deserved it. Anyway, the few callers in the house would often find Lavinia alone on the ground floor, while odd cries and footsteps resounded in the boarded-up second story. She would never tell what her father and the boy were doing up there, and when she turned pale and displayed an abnormal degree of fear when a jocose fish peddler tried the locked door leading to the stairway. The peddler told the store lounges at Dunwich Village that he thought he heard a horse stamping on the floor above. The loungers reflected, thinking of the doors and runway, of the cattle that so swiftly disappeared, then shuddered at the recalled tales of old Whately's youth, the strange things that are called out of the earth when a bullock is sacrificed at the proper time to certain heathen gods. It had for some time been noticed that dogs had begun to hate and fear the whole Whately place as violently as they hated and feared young Wilbur personally. 1917, the war came. Was that when World War I started? Yeah, must have been then. I would have guessed like 1919, but I'm not good with the dates of World War One. I know World War II, 1939 to 1945. I think it's September 2nd and September 1st. The dates it began and ended. I know it's early September, maybe September 4th instead of the 2nd, something like that. In 1917, the war came, and Sawyer Whately, as chairman of the local draft board, had hard work finding a quota of young Dunwich men fit even to be sent to a development camp. The government, alarmed at such signs of wholesome regional decadence, sent several officers and medical experts to investigate, conducting a survey which New England newspapers readers may still recall. There's the publicity attending this investigation, which set reporters on the track of the Whateleys. As the Boston Globe and Arkham Advertiser print flamboyant Sunday stories of young Wilbur's precociousness. Close enough. On Whately's black magic, the shelves of strange books, the sealed second story of the ancient farmhouse, and the weirdness of the whole region and its hill noises. Almost had it. Wilbur, saying Wilbur's hard, was 4.5 then. Looked like a lad of 15. He's growing up pretty... Man, the kids these days grow up pretty fast. His lip and cheek were fuzzy with a coarse dark down, and his voice had begun to break. Earl Sawyer went out to the Whately place with both sets of reporters and the cameramen. It called their attention to the queer stench which now seemed to trickle down with the sealed upper space. It was, he said, exactly like a smell found in the tool shed abandoned when the house was finally repaired, like the faint odors which he sometimes thought he caught near the stone circles of the mountains. And then when they say cameramen, they literally mean cameramen instead of like video, because they would be getting it around that time, I think, like movies and TVs and stuff. I think it's like a decade later, but close enough. Well, maybe 2 decades later even. I'm bad when it comes to dates of technology. I'm bad when it comes to dates. Both, like, time-wise and going out with girls-wise. Well, no, I'm not bad. Just, you know, I've never tried it, so I don't know if I'm bad. Wait, no, I'm bad, I swear. Where was I? Dunwich folk read the stories when they appeared, and grinned over the obvious mistakes. They wondered, too, why the writers made so much of the fact that old Whately had already paid for his cattle in gold pieces of extremely ancient date. The Whateleys had received their visitors with ill-concealed distaste, but they did not dare court further publicity by a violent resistance or refusal to talk. Chapter 4. How many chapters is this? Should I scroll down? No, spoilers! For a decade, the animals of the Whateleys sink indistinguishably into the general life of the morbid community, used to their queer ways and hardened to their May even, all-hallow orgy. Oh, no, it's when they get the ogres, right? That's not a lewd thing. No lewd. Or maybe it's not lewd in this context, but I don't know the etymology of that word, but I'm going to assume it's lewd and say no. Hold on, I want to look up Dunwich horror. How many chapters? Okay, I think I found something. There's 10 chapters. Okay. For a decade, twice a year there light fires on top of the Sentinel Hill, which times the mountain rumblings would recur with greater and greater violence. Well, at all seasons, there are strange and portentous doings at the lonely farmhouse. In the course of time, collies professed to hear sounds in the sealed upper story, even when all the family are downstairs. So, I know Wilbur has a brother, I think? Do you think that's what they're keeping up there? And the brother's the evil thing? I think it's something like that. In the course of time, like Wilbur, I'm kind of thinking Wilbur's like a red herring here. I know that she gave birth to the monster, like spoiler alert, sorry. And one of the brothers, is it? I mean, something's up with Wilbur, but I think that's kind of like, you know, is actually the one we don't know about. In the course of time, collies professed to hearing sounds in the sealed upper story, even when all the family were downstairs. Wondered how swiftly or how lingeringly a cow or bullock was usually sacrificed. There's talk of a complaint to the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, but nothing ever came of it, since Dunwich folks are never anxious to call the outside world's attention to themselves. About 1923, Wilbur was a boy of 10 whose mind, voice, stature, and bearded face gave all the impressions of maturity. A second great siege of carpentry went on at the old house. It was all inside the sealed upper part. From the bits of discarded lumber, people concluded that the youth and his grandfather had knocked out all the partitions, even removed the attic floor, leaving only one vast open void between the ground story and the peaked roof. They torn down the great central chimney, too, fitted the rusty range with a flimsy outside tin stove pipe. In the spring, after the event, old Whately noticed the growing number of whippoorwills that had come out of the cold spring glen to chirp under his window at night. He seemed to regard the circumstances as one of the great significance. Told the loungers at Osborne's that he thought that the time had almost come. "They whistle just in tune with my breathing now," he said, "and I guess they're getting ready to catch my soul. They know it's a-going out, and I don't calculate and to miss it. You'll know, boys, or till I'm gone, whether they get me or not. If they do, they'll keep me a-singing and laughing till the break of day. If they don't, they'll kinder quiet down like. I expect 'em and the souls they hunt for have some pretty tough tussles sometimes." I don't know if that's awful or great, or both. At Lammas night, 1924, Dr. Holton of Aylesbury was hastily summoned by Wilbur Whately, who had lashed his one remaining horse to the darkness and telephoned from Osborne's in the village. found old Whately in a very grave state. The cardiac action of stertorous and breathing that told him of it not far off. No, old Whately! I want to do your voice more! The shapeless albino daughter and oddly bearded grandson stood by the bedside. Whistled the vacant abyss overheard. There came a disquieting suggestion of rhythmical. Do I just need to leave, towards that way? Surging and laughing as of the waves on some level beach. The doctor, though, was chiefly disturbed by the chattering night birds outside, a seemingly limitless legion of whippoorwills that cried their endless message in repetitions, timed diabolically to the wheezing gasps of the dying man. It was uncanny and unnatural. Too much, thought Dr. Holton. Like the whole of the region he had entered so reluctantly in response to the urgent call. Towards 1 o'clock, old Whately finally regained consciousness. He made it! And interrupted. I hit my hand there on my desk. And interrupted his wheezing to choke out a few words to his grandson. More space, Willie. More space soon. You grows, and that grows faster. And that, it's the brother. I'll be ready to starve you soon, boy. Starve? Is it save? Open up the gates to young Suthoth. Suthoth? Suthoth? Suthoth. Sounds better. With a long chant that you'll find on page 751 of the complete edition. And then put a match to the prison. Fire from earth can't burn it now. No how? He's obviously quite mad. After a pause, during which the flock of whippoorwills outside adjusted their crests to the altar temple, while some indications of the strange hill noises came from afar off. Yet another sentence or two. Feed it regular, Willie, and mind the quantity. But don't let it grow too fast for the place. For if it busts quarters or gets out afore it ye opens to young Suthoth, it's all over and no use. Only them from beyond kin make it multiply and work. Only them. The old ones as wants to come back. But speech gave place to gasps again. Lavinia screamed at the way the whippoorwill. What's a whippoorwills? Followed the change. Is that like a bird? It's the same for more than an hour. When the final throaty rattle came, Dr. Holden drew. I hear that a shuriken, like a shuriken? The ninja stars. Lids over the glazing gray eyes. I'm tired. It's the tomor of the bird. Yeah, it's gotta be birds. Faded imperceptibly to silence. Lavinia sobbed, but Wilbur only chuckled, whistled the hill noises, rumbled faintly. They didn't get him, muttered in a heavy bass voice. Wilbur was by this time a scholar of really tremendous erudition in a one-sided way. It's quietly known by correspondence to many librarians in distant places where rare and forbidden books of old days were kept. He was more and more hated and dreaded around Dunwich because of certain youthful disappearances, which suspicion laid vaguely at his door. He was always able to silence and inquire through fear or through use of that fund of old-time gold which still, as in his grandfather's time, went forth regularly and increasingly for cattle buying. He was now tremendously mature of aspect, and his height, having reached the normal adult limit, seemed inclined to wax beyond the figure. 1925, when a scholarly correspondent from Miskatonic University called upon him one day and departed pale and puzzled, he is a fully 6 3/4 feet tall. I mean, he's only like 5? Wait, how old is he here? Well, no, it's 1920s now. 1925 is, so he's 12. Okay, yeah, he's a grown boy. Wilbur had treated his half-deformed albino mother with a growing contempt, only forbidding her to go to the hills with him on May Eve and Hallowmas. In 1926, the poor creature complained to Mammy Bishop of being afraid of him. There's more about him as I know than I can tell you, Mammy, she said. And nowadays, there's more nor what I know myself. I vow for God, I don't know what he wants, nor what he's trying to do. Well, that's Lavinia and me to say that cute voice. There's more about him. That Halloween, the hill noises sounded louder than ever. And fire burned Sentinel Hill as usual. The people paid more attention to their rhythmical screaming of vast flocks of unnaturally belated whippoorwills, seemed to be assembled near the unlighted Whately farmhouse. After midnight, their shrill notes burst into a kind of pantomimic cachinnation, which filled all the countryside. Not until dawn did they finally quiet down. Then they vanished, hurrying southward where they were fully a month overdue. What this meant, no one could quite be certain until later. None of the country folk seemed to have died. But poor Lavinia Whately, the twisted albino, was never seen again? What? In the summer of 1927, Wilbur repaired 2 sheds in the farmyard and began moving his books and effects out to them. Soon afterwards, Errol Sawyer told the loungers at Osborne's that more carpentry was going on in the Whately farmhouse. Wilbur was closing all the doors and windows on the ground floor, seemed to be taking out partitions as he and his grandfather had done upstairs 4 years before. He was living in one of the sheds. Sawyer thought he seemed unusually worried and tremulous. People generally suspected him of knowing something about his mother's disappearance. Very few approached his neighborhood now. His head had increased to more than 7 feet, showed no signs of ceasing its development. I don't think that's normal. Call me crazy. Chapter 5. The following winter brought an event no less strange than Wilbur's first trip outside the Dunwich region. Correspondence with the Widener Library at Harvard, the Bibliothèque Nationale in Paris, the British Museum, the University of Buenos Aires, and the Library of Miskatonic University at Arkham had failed to get him the loan of the book he desperately wanted. So at length he set out in person, shabby, dirty, bearded, and uncouth dialect, to consult a copy of Miskatonic, which is nearest to him geographically. Nearly 8 feet tall and carrying a cheap new valise from Osborne's general store, the stark and goatish gargoyle, I mean that's pretty rude, appeared one day in Arkham in quest of a dreaded volume kept under lock and key at the college library. The hideous Necronomicon, the mad Arab Alhayez of Alasius Wormius's Latin version, as printed in Spain in the 17th century. Never seen a city before, but had no thought to find his way to the university grounds, where indeed he passed heedlessly by the great white-fanged watchdog that barked with unnatural fury and enmity, tugged frantically at its stout chain. Wilbur had with him the priceless but imperfect copy of Dr. D's English version, which his father had bequeathed him. Upon receiving access to the Latin copy, he at once began to collide the two texts with the aim of discovering a certain passage which would have come on the 751st page of his own defective volume. This much he could not simply refrain from telling the librarian. Same erudite, Henry Armitage. I think I said close enough. A.M. Miskatonic, Ph.D. Princeton, Lit. D. Johns Hopkins. Johns Hopkins? No, John Hopkins? Who once called at the farm, and now politely plied him with questions. He was looking, he had to admit, for a kind of formula or incantation containing the frightful name Yog-Sothoth, as it puzzled him to find discrepancies, duplications, and ambiguities which made the matter of determination far from easy. As he copied the formula he finally chose, Dr. Armitage. Right! That's why I know that last name. I think it's Alma's last name in Valhalla. That's where I heard it recently. Okay. Oh, recently. That was a while ago. Looked involuntarily over his shoulder at the open pages. The left-hand one, which, the Latin version, contains such monstrous threats to the peace and sanity of the world. Nor is it to be thought, in the text as Armitage mentally translated it, that man is either the oldest or the last of Earth's masters, or that the common bulk of life and substance walks alone. The old ones were, the old ones are, and the old ones shall be. Not in the spaces we know, but between them. They walk serene and primal, undimensioned and to us unseen. Yog-Sothoth knows the gate. Yog-Sothoth is the gate. Yog-Sothoth is the key and guardian of the gate. Past, present, future. All are one in the Yog-Sothoth. He knows where the old ones broke through of old, where they shall break through again. He knows where they have trod earth's fields, where they still tread them, why no one can behold them as they tread. By their smell can men sometimes know that them near, but of their semblance can no man know, saving only in the features of those they have begotten on mankind, and of those are they of many sorts, differing in likeness from man's truest eidolon, I think I said that right, to that shape with that sight or substance which is they. They walk unseen in foul and lonely places where the words have been spoken, and their rites howl through at their seasons. The wind gibbers with their voices, and the earth mutters with their consciousness. They bend the forest and crush the city, yet May not forest or city below behold the hand that smites. Cadath in the cold waste hath knowed them. What man knows Cadath? Hey guys, sorry about that. Cut it. I think I finished my recitation of this in the video. So I'll just start here, or I don't want to go back and read all this. Dr. Armitage, associating what he is reading with what he heard of Dunwich and his brooding presences, and of Wilbur Whately and his dim, hideous aura that stretched from a dubious birth to a cloud of probable matricide, felt a wave of fright as tangible as a draft of the tomb's cold clamminess. The bent, goatish giant before him seemed like the spawn of another planet or dimension, something only partly of mankind, and linked to the black gulfs of essence and entity that stretched like titan phantasms beyond all spheres of force and matter, space and time. Presently, Wilbur raised his head and began speaking in that strange, resonant fashion, which hinted at sound-producing organs unlike the rest of mankind's. "Mr. Armitage," he said, "I calculate we're going to take that book home. There's things in it I've got to try under certain conditions which I can't get in here. It would be a mortal sin to let a red tape rule hold me up. Let me take it along, sir, and I swear nobody will know the difference. I don't need to tell you I'll take good care of it. It won't me that put this D copy in the shape it is." He stopped as he saw a firm denial on the librarian's face. The strong goated features grew crafty. "Armitage, half ready to tell him he might make a copy what parts he needed. That's suddenly the possible consequences, and checked himself. There's too much responsibility in giving such a being the key to such blasphemous outer spheres." Whately saw how things stood, tried to answer lightly. "Well, alright, if you feel the way about it. Maybe Harvard won't be so fussy as you be." Without saying more, he rose and strode out of the building, stooping in each doorway. Armitage heard the savage yelping of the great watchdog. He studied Whately's gorilla-like lope as he crossed the bit of campus visible from the window. He thought of the wild tales he had heard, recalled the old Sunday tales in which the advertiser, these things, and the lore which he had picked up from the Dunwich rustics and villagers during his one visit there, on seeing things not of the earth, or at least not of the tri-dimensional earth, rushed fretted and horrible through New England's glens, and brooded obscenely at their mountain tops. Of this he had long felt certain. Now he seemed to sense the close presence of some terrible part of the intruding horror, to glimpse a heckish advance to the black dominion of the ancient and once passive nightmare. He locked away the Necronomicon with a shudder of disgust. The room still reeked with an unholy and unidentifiable stench. "As a foulness shall ye know them," he quoted. Yes. The odor was the same as which had sickened him at the Whately farmhouse less than 3 years before. That of Wilbur, goatish and ominous, once again, left mocking at the village rumors of his parentage. "Inbreeding!" Armitage muttered half aloud of himself. "Great God, what simpletons! Show them Arthur Mansion's Great God Pan, and they'll think it's a common Dunwich scandal. But what cursed shapeless influence on or off this three-dimensional earth was Wilbur Whately's father, born on Candlemas, 9 months after May Eve of 1912. When the talk of the queer earth noises reached clear to Arkham, what walked in the mountain that May night? What ruinous horror fastened itself on the world in half-human flesh and blood?" During the ensuing weeks, Dr. Armitage set about to collect all possible data on Wilbur Whately and the formless presences around Dunwich. Got out communication with Dr. Houghton of Aylesbury, who had attended old Whately in his last illness, but much to wander over the grandfather's last words as quoted by his physician. Visited Dunwich village failed to bring out much that was new. The close survey of the Necronomicon, those parts which Wilbur had sought so avidly, seemed to supply new and terrible clues to the nature, methods, and desires to the strange evil so vaguely threatening this planet. Talks with several students of archaic lore in Boston, letters to many elsewhere, gave him growing amazement which passed slowly through various degrees of alarms to a state of really acute spiritual fear. As the summer drew, he felt dimly that something had to be done about the lurking terrors of the upper Miskatonic Valley, about the monstrous being known to the world as Wilbur Whately. Okay, I'm gonna go to bed. I'll do the rest in the morning. I'm tired. I've been at this for about an hour now, I think. I'm halfway through, so I mean, I've got to go. It's 5 a.m. on April Fool's, so I'll just upload it later in the day. It's still April Fool's later in the day, so it counts. See you guys. Hey guys, sorry about that. We're back with chapter 6 the next day. No longer exhausted. Well, I kind of still am, actually. There's the music. Okay. The Dunwich horror itself came between Lammas and the Equinox in 1928. Dr. Armitage. Is Dr. Armitage like our protagonist? Because it looks like he's going to be the one to take action against this Dunwich whore. The doctor was among those who had witnessed its monstrous prologue. He had heard, meanwhile, of Whately's grotesque trip to Cambridge, and of his frantic efforts to borrow a copy from the Necronomicon, the Widener Library. Those efforts had been in vain, since Armitage had issued warnings of the keenest intensity to all librarians having charge of the dreaded volume. Wilbur had been shockingly nervous at Cambridge, anxious for the book, yet almost equally anxious to get home again, as if he feared the result of being away too long. Early in August, the half-expected outcome developed, and in the small hours of the 3rd, Dr. Armitage had awakened suddenly by the wild, fierce cries of the savage watchdog on the college campus. "He's gonna break in!" Deep and terrible, the snarling, half-mad growls and barks continued, always in mounting volume, but with hideously significant pauses. Then there rang out a scream from the wholly different throat. Such a scream as roused half the sleepers of Arkham and haunted their dreams even afterwards. Such a scream as could come from no being born of earth, or wholly of earth. Armitage hastened into some clothing and rushed across the street and lawn to the college buildings, saw that others were ahead of him, and heard that echoes of a burglar alarm still shrilling from the library. An open window showed black and gaping into the moonlight. Whitecomb had indeed completed its entrance, for the barking and the screaming, now fast fading into a mixed low growling and moaning, proceeded unmistakably from within. Some instinct warned Armitage that what was taking place was not a thing for unfortified eyes to see, so he brushed back the crowd with authority as he unlocked the vestibule door. Among the others, he saw Professor Warren Rice and Dr. Francis Morgan, men to whom he had told some of his conjectures and misgivings. These two motioned to accompany him inside. The inward sounds, except for a watchful droning whine from the dog, had by this time quite subsided, but Armitage now perceived with a sudden start that a loud chorus of whippoorwills among the shrubbery had commenced a dangably rhythmical piping, as if in unison with the last breath of a dying man. The building was full of frightful stench which Dr. Armitage knew too well. The 3 men rushed across the hall into the small genealogical reading room, whence the low whining came. For a second, nobody dared to turn on the light, and Armitage summoned up his courage and stepped the light. One of the 3, is not certain which, shrieked aloud at which sprawled before them amongst disordered tables and overturned chairs. Professor Rice declares that he wholly lost consciousness for an instant, though he did not stumble or fall. So which one of them screamed? I want to bet Morgan? Yeah, Morgan's totally the type of guy to scream. Go on now. The thing that lay half bent on its side in a fetid pool of greenish-yellow ichor and tarry stickiness was almost 9 feet tall. The dog had torn off all the clothing and some of the skin. It was not quite dead, but twitched silently and spasmodically, while its chest heaved in monstrous unison while the mad piping of the expectant whippoorwills outside. Bits of shoe leathers and fragments of apparel were scattered around the room. Just inside the window, an empty canvas sack lay where it had evidently been thrown. Near the central desk, a revolver had fallen, a dented but undischarged cartridge, later explaining why it had not been fired. The thing itself, however, crowded out all other images at the time. It would be trite and not fully accurate to say that no human pen could describe it, but one may properly say that it could not be vividly visualized by anyone whose ideas of aspect and contour are too closely bound by those of common life forms of this planet, and of the 3 known dimensions. It was partly human, beyond a doubt, with very man-like hands and head, with a goatish chinless face with a stamp of the Whateleys upon it. But the torso and lower parts of the body were teratologically fabulous, so that only generous clothing could have ever enabled it to walk on Earth unchallenged or eradicated. Above the waist, it was semi-anthropomorphic. Those chests, where the dog's reading paws still rested watchfully, grinding. His reading paws, he's reading a book on top of him, and the leather articulated hide of a crocodile or alligator. The back was piebald with yellow and black, dimly suggested the squamous covering of certain snakes. Below the waist, though, was the worst, for here all human resemblance left off and sheer fantasy began. The skin was thickly covered with coarse black fur, and the abdomen a square of long greenish-gray tentacles with red sucking mouths protruded limply. Their arrangement was odd. It seemed to follow the symmetries of some cosmic geometry unknown to Earth or the solar system. On each of the hips, deep set in a kind of pinkish, slitted orbit, is what seemed to be a rudimentary eye. Whistle in lieu of a tail, there depended on a kind of trunk or feeler with purple annular markings, with many evidences of being an undeveloped mouth or throat. The limbs, save for their black fur, roughly resemble the hind legs of prehistoric Earth's giant saurians. And terminated in ridgy vein pads, there were neither hoofs nor claws. When the thing breathed, its tail and tentacles rhythmically changed colors, as if from some circulatory cause normal to the non-human side of its ancestry. In the tentacles, this was observable as a deepening of the greenish tinge. Whistle in the tail is a manifest with a yellow appearance which alternated with a sickly grayish white in the spaces between the purple rings. Of genuine blood there was none, only the fetid greenish yellow ichor, which straggled above the painted floor beyond the radius of the stickiness, and left a curious discoloration behind it. As the persons the three men seemed to rouse the dying thing, began to mumble without turning on or raising its head. Dr. Armitage made no written record of its mouthings, but asserts confidently that nothing in English was uttered. First, the syllables defied all correlation with any speech of Earth. Towards the last, there came some disjointed fragments, evidently taken from the Necronomicon, that monstrous blasphemy in quest of which the thing had perished. Those fragments, as Armitage recalls them, are something like Nagai, Naga, Ga, Bug, Shagag, Yahag, Yag Satath. It showed off into nothingness as though whippoorwills shrieked in rhythmical crescendos of unholy anticipation. Then came a halt and gasping. The dog raised his head in a long, lugubrious howl. A change came over the yellow, goatish face of the prostrate thing. The great black eyes fell unappallingly. Outside the window, the shrilling of the whippoorwills had suddenly ceased. And above the murmurs of the gathering crowd, there came the sound of a panic-struck whirring and fluttering. Against the moon, vast clouds of feathery watchers rose and raced from sight, frantic at which they had sought for prey. All at once, the dog started up abruptly, gave a frightened bark, and leaped nervously out the window by which it had entered. A cry rose from the crowd, and Dr. Armitage shouted to the men outside that no one must be admitted till the police or medical examiner come. He was thankful that the windows were just too high to permit of peering in, drew the dark curtains carefully down over each other. By this time, 2 policemen had arrived, and Dr. Morgan, meeting them in the vestibule, was urging them for their own sakes to postpone entrance to the stench-filled reading room till the examiner came. The prostrate thing could be covered up. Meanwhile, frightful changes were taking place on the floor. One need not describe the kind and rate of shrinkage and disintegration. Kill me. Disintegration. There, I got it. Okay. I carries before the eyes of Dr. Armitage and Professor Rice, but it's permissible to say that, except for the external appearances of face and hands, the really human elements of Wilbur Whately must have been very small. When the medical examiner came, there's a sticky whitish mass on the painted boards, and the monstrous odor was nearly disappeared. I mean, see, oh, he's not stinky anymore. Okay. Apparently, Whately had no skull or bony skeleton, at least in any truly stable sense. He'd taken someone after his unknown father. Ooh, let me take a drink. Oh, why does my drink taste weird? I'm gonna go grab another one. You guys just stay there, I'll be right back. I'll be right back! Don't move a muscle! Not a muscle! Coming back! This one kind of tastes weird too. Maybe I need to like brush my tongue or something. Anyway, all this was only the prologue of the actual Dunwich horror. Formalities were gone through by bewildered officials, abnormal details were duly kept from the press and public, and men were sent to Dunwich and Aylesbury to look up property and notify any who might be heirs of the late Wilbur Whately. Oh yeah. Okay, 10 minutes. Just making sure it's recording. They found the countryside in great agitation, both because of the growing rumblings beneath the domed hills, because of the unwanted stench and surging lapping sounds which came increasingly from the great empty shell formed by Whately's boarded-up farmhouse. Errol Sawyer, tended the horse and cattle during Wilbur's absence, developed a woefully acute case of nerves. The officials devised excuses not to enter the noisome boarding place. They were glad to confine their survey to the deceased living quarters, the newly mended sheds, to a single visit. They filed a ponderous report at the courthouse in Aylesbury. Litigations concerning airship are said to still be in the process amongst the innumerable Whateleys, decayed and undecayed, of the upper Miskatonic Valley. An almost interminable manuscript in strange letters, written in a huge letter and judged a sort of diary because of the spacing and variegations in ink and penmanship, presented a baffling puzzle to those who found it on the old burial, which served as its owner's desk. After a week of debate, it was sent to Miskatonic University, together with the deceased collection of strange books, for study and possible translation. But even the best linguists soon saw that it was not likely to be unriddled with ease. No trace of the ancient gold with which Wilbur and Old Whateley always paid their debts had yet to be discovered. It was in the dark of September 9th that the horror broke loose. The hills' noises had been very pronounced during the evening, and dogs barked frantically all night. Early risers in the 10th noticed a peculiar stench in the air. About 7 o'clock, Luther Brown, the hired boy at George Corey's, between Cold Spring Glen and the village, rushed frenziedly back from his morning trip to Ten Acre Meadow with his cows. He was almost convulsed with fright as he stumbled into the kitchen. In the yard outside, the no less frightened herd was pawing and lowing pitifully, having followed the boy back in the panic they shared with him. Between gasps, Luther tried to stammer out his tale to Mrs. Corey. "Up there in the rod behind the glen, Miss Corey! There's some of the men there! It smells like thunder, and all the bushes and little trees is pushed back from the rod like they'd a house been moved along with it. And that ain't the worst neither. There's prints in the rod, Miss Corey. Great round prints as big as barrelheads, all sunk down deep like an elephant that's been along. Only there's a sight more no 4 feet could make. I looked at one or two before I ran, and I see everyone was covered with lines spreading out from one place, like as if a big palm leaf fans, 3 times as big as any thing is, had have been pounded down into the rod. And the smell was awful, like what it is around Wizard Whately's old house." Here he faltered, seeming to shiver afresh with the fright that had sent him flying home. Mrs. Corey, unable to extract more information, began telephoning the neighbors, thus starting on its rounds the overture of panic that heralded the major terrors. When she got Sally Sawyer, housekeeper at Seth Bishop's, the nearest place to Whately's, became her turn to listen instead of transmit for Sally's boy Chansey, who slept poorly, been up in the hill towards Whately's, and had dashed back in terror after one look at the place, the pasturage where Mr. Bishop's cows had been left all night. So, like, the police, like, why didn't they examine his house, like, more thoroughly? Like, you know, there's this thing in the attic that, could have shot? Might have worked? Maybe? "Yes, Miss Curry. Miss Corey. Not Miss Curry. No." Came Sally's tremulous voice over the party wire. "Chansey, he just came back a posting in. Couldn't have talked more. Been scared. He said old Whately's house is all blowed up, with the timbers scattered around like they've been dynamite inside. On the bottom floor ain't though, but it's all covered with a kind of tar-like substance that smells awful, and drips down often the edges of the ground where the side timbers is blown away. And there's awful kind of marks in the yard, too. Great round marks, bigger round than a hogshead. And all sticky with stuff like it is on the blown up house. Chansey says they lids off into the meadows. What a great swath running in a barn is matted down, and all the stone walls tumbled every which way wherever it goes." I think I started to sound like Scottish there, or Irish, one of those. "And he says he, Miss Corey, as how he started to look for Seth's cows, frightened as he was, and found them in the upper pasture nigh that devil's hop yard in an awful shape. Half of 'em clean gone, and night half of 'em that's left is sucked most dry of blood, with sores on 'em like they've been Whately's cattle ever since Lavinia's black brat was born. Seth is gone, and now to look at 'em, though I'll vow he won't keep to get very nigh Wizard Whately's." Chansey didn't look careful To see what the big bearded down swath led alter, it left the pasturage. But Sissy thinks it pinted towards the glen near out of the village. I tell ye, Miss Corey, there's something abroad as it hadn't order be abroad. I fear, and I for one think that Black Wilbur Whately has come to the bad end he deserved. Is at the bottom of the breeding of it. He want all of him in himself. I had let's say to everybody, and I think he and old Whately must erase something in that there nailed up houses ain't even so human as he was. There's a list of unseen things around Dunwich, living things. It ain't human and ain't good for human folks. The ground was up talking last night, and towards morning Chancey he heard the whippoorwills so loud in Cold Spring Glen he couldn't sleep none. Then he thought he heard another faint-like sound over towards Wizard Whately's, a kind of ripping or a tearing of wood, like some kind of big box or crate had been opened fur off. What with this and that, he didn't get to sleep at all till sunup. No sooner was he up this morning, but he's got to go over to Whately's and see what the matter. You see enough, I tell you, Miss Corey. It's done me no good, and I think as all the men folk ought to get up to a party and do something, I know something's awful about. I feel my time is nigh, though only God knows just what it is. Did your Luther take account of what the big tracks led to? No? Oh, Miss Corey. If there was a glen beyond this side of the glen, and ain't got none of your house yet, I calculate they must go to the glen itself. They'll do that. Now let's say Cold Spring Glen ain't no healthy nor decent place. The whippoorwills and fireflies there never did act like they're the creators of God, and they've been saying it's... And they's them that say you can hear strange things a rushing and a talking in the air down there if you're staying in the right place, between the rock falls and Barry's Den. That was hard. Okay, we're done. By that noon, fully 3/4 of men and boys of Dunwich were trooping over the roads and meadows between the new-made Whately ruins and Cold Spring Glen. Examining in horror the vast monstrous prints, the main bishop cattle, the strange noisome wreck of the farmhouse, and the bruised, matted vegetation of the fields and roadsides. Whatever had burst loose upon the world had assuredly gone down into the great sinister ravine, where all the trees on the banks were bent and broken, and a great avenue had been gouged in the precipice? I think it's precipice. Hanging underbush. It's as though a house, launched by an avalanche, slid down through the tangled growth of the almost vertical slope. From below no sound came, but only a distant, undefinable fetter. It is not to be wondered at that the men preferred to stay on the edge and argue, rather than descend and be the unknown Cyclopean horror in its lair. 3 dogs that were with the party had barked furiously at first, but seemed cowed and reluctant when near the glen. Someone telephoned the news to the Aylesbury Transcript, but the editor, accustomed to wild tales from Dunwich, did no more than concoct a humorous paragraph about it, and soon afterwards reproduced by the Associated Press. That night everyone went home, and every house and barn was barricaded as stoutly as possible. Needless to say, no cattle were allowed to remain in the open pasturage. About 2 in the morning, a frightful stench and savage barking of the dogs awakened the household at Elmer Fry's, on the eastern edge of Cold Spring Glen, and all agreed that they could hear a muffled swishing and lapping sound from somewhere outside. Mrs. Fry proposed telephoning the neighbors. Elmer was about to agree, and the noise of splintering wood burst in upon their deliberations. It came, apparently, from the barn, which was quickly followed by a hideous screaming and stamping among the cattle. The dogs slavered and crouched close to the root of the fear-numbed family. Fry lit a lantern through the force of habit, but knew it would be death to go out into the black farmyard. The children and the womenfolk whimpered, kept from screaming by some obscure vestigial instinct of defense which told them their lives depended on silence. At last, the noise of the cattle subsided to a pitiful moaning. A great snapping, crashing, and crackling ensued. The Frys huddled together in the sitting room, did not dare to move until the last echoes died away far down in the Cold Spring Glen. Then, amidst the dismal moans from the stable and the demonic piping of late whippoorwills of the glen, Selina Fry tottered to the telephone, spread what news she could of the last second of the horror, the last phase of the horror. The next day, all the countryside was in a panic and cowed. Uncommunicative groups came and went from the fiendish thing had occurred. Where the fiendish thing had occurred. 2 tiny swaths of destruction stretched from the glen to the Fry farmyard. Monstrous prints covered the bare patches of ground, and one side of the old red barn had completely caved in. Of the cattle, only about a quarter could be found and identified. Some of these were carriers fragments. All that survived had to be shot. Earl Sawyer suggested that help be asked from Aylesbury of Arkham, but others maintained it would be of no use. Old Zeppelin Whately, of a branch that hovered about halfway between soundness and decadence, made darkly wild suggestions about rites that ought to be practiced on the hilltops. He came of a line which tradition ran strong. His memories of chanting in the great stone circles were not altogether connected with Wilbur and his grandfather. Darkness fell upon the stricken countryside too passive to organize a 4-year-old defense. In a few cases, closely related families would band together and watch in the gloom under one roof. But in general, there's only a reputation of the barricading the night before, the futile, ineffective gesture of loading muskets and setting pitchforks handily about. Nothing, however, occurred except some hill noises. When the day came, there were many whom of the new horror had gone as swiftly as it had come. There were even bold souls who proposed an offensive expedition down in the glen, though they did not venture to set off an actual example to the still reluctant majority. When night came and the barricading was repeated, though there was less huddling together of the families, in the morning both the Fry and the Seth Bishop households reported excitement amongst the dogs and vague sounds and stenches from afar, while early explorers noted the horror of a fresh set of the monstrous tracks in the road skirting Sentinel Hill. As before, the sides of the road showed a bruising indicative of the blasphemously stupendous bulk of the horror, while the confirmation of the tracks seemed to augur a passage in 2 directions. As if the moving mountain had come from a cold spring glen and returned to it along the same path. At the base of the hill, a 30-foot swath of crushed shrubbery and saplings led steeply upward, and the seekers gasped when they saw that even the most perpendicular places did not deflect the inexplorable trail. Whatever the horror was, it could scale a sheer stony cliff of almost complete verticality, and as the investigators climbed around to the hill summit by safer routes, they saw that the trail ended, or rather reversed there. It was here that the Whateleys used to build their heckish fires and chant their heckish rituals by the table-like stone of May Eve and Hallowmass. Now that the very stone formed the center of the vast space stretched around by the mountainous horror, whistle upon its slightly concave surface was a thick, fetid deposit of the same tarry stickiness observed on the floor of the ruined Whately farmhouse when the horror escaped. Men looked at one another and muttered. Then they looked down the hill. Apparently the horror descended by a route much the same as that of its ascent. To speculate was futile. Reason, logic, and normal ideas of motivation stood confounded. Only old Zeppelin, who was not with the group, could have done justice to the situation or suggested a plausible explanation. Thursday night began much like the others, but it ended less happily. The whippoorwills in the glen had screamed with such unusual persistence that many could not sleep. About 3 a.m., all the party telephones rang tremulously. Those who took down their receivers heard a fright-mad voice shriek, "Help! Oh my God!" Sometime a crashing sound followed the breaking off the exclamation. There's nothing more. No one dared to do anything, and no one till morning once the call came. Then those who heard it called everyone on the line, and then only the Fries did not reply. The truth appeared an hour later, when a hastily assembled group of our men trudged out to the Fry place at the head of the glen. It was horrible, yet hardly a surprise. There were many swaths and monstrous prints. There was no longer any house. It caved in like an eggshell. Amongst the ruins, nothing living or dead could be discovered, only stench and a tarry stickiness. The Elmore Fries had been erased by the Dunwich. It's nice that they had time to call, but we don't know they're erased. Maybe they got away. I mean, their house is gone, but they could have. No, they're dead. In the meantime, a quieter yet even spiritually poignant face of the horror had been blackly unwinding itself behind the closed door of the shelf land room of Arkham. The Carey's manuscript record, or diary of Wilbur Whately, delivered to Miskatonic University for translation, caused much worry and bafflement amongst the experts in language, both ancient and modern. Its very alphabet, notwithstanding a general resemblance to the heavily shaded Arabic used in Mesopotamia, being absolutely unknown to any available authority. The final conclusion of the linguists was that the textures represented an artificial alphabet, giving the effect of a cipher, though none of the usual methods of cryptographic solution seemed to furnish any clue, even when applied on the basis of every tongue the writer might conceivably have used. The ancient books taken from the Whately quarters, while absorbingly interesting and in several cases promising to open up new and terrible lanes of research among the philosophers and men of science, were of no assistance whatever in the matter. One of them, a heavy tome with an iron clasp, was in another unknown alphabet, This one of a very difficult cast, resembling Sanskrit more than anything else. Sanskrit? Yeah. The old ledger was at length given wholly in the charge of Dr. Armitage, both because of his peculiar interest in the Whately matter, because of the wide linguistic learning and skill in the mystical formula, antiquity? Wait. No. All comes tumbling down. And the Middle Ages. Armitage had an idea that the alphabet might be something esoterically used by certain forbidden cults which had come from old times, which have inherited many forms and traditions from the wizards of the Saracranic world. That question, however, did not deem vital, since it would be unnecessary to know the origin of the symbols if, as he suspected, they were used as a cipher in a modern language. It was his belief that, considering the great amount of text involved, the writer would scarcely have wished the trouble of using another speech than his own, save perhaps in certain special formula and incantations. Accordingly, he attacked the manuscript with a preliminary assumption that the bulk of it was in English. Dr. Armitage knew that the repeated failures of his colleagues, the riddle was a deep and complex one, and that no simple mode of solution could merit even a trial. All through late August, he fortified himself with the massive lore of cryptography, drawing upon the fullest resources of his own library, wandering night after night among the arcana of Trithemius' Polygraphia, Gymnopedie Portes, I'm butchering all these names by the way, De Furtivis Literarium Notis, De Figiner's Traitus Chiffrus, Falconer's Cryptomenicius, a study of the books with attacks on the manuscript itself. Oh, I skipped a line. Just more books. Some fairly modern authorities as Blair, von Marden, and Kluber's Cryptographic. He interspersed his studies of the book with attacks on the manuscript itself, and in time became convinced that he had to deal with one of the subtlest and most ingenious of cryptograms, which many separate lists of corresponding letters were arranged like a multiplication table. The message built up arbitrary keywords known only to the initiated. The older authorities seemed rather more helpful than the newer ones. Armitage concluded that the code of the manuscript was one of the great antiquity, no doubt handed down through a long line of mystical experimenters. Several times he seemed near daylight, only to be set back by some unforeseen obstacle. Then as September approached, the clouds began to clear. Certain letters, as used in certain parts of the manuscript, most definitely and unmistakably, it became obvious that the text was indeed in English. On the evening of September 2nd, the last major barrier gave way. Dr. Armitage read for the first time a continuous passage of Wilbur Whately's annals. It was in truth a diary, as all had thought. It was couched in a style clearly showing the mixed occult erudition and general illiteracy of the strange being who wrote it. Almost the first long passage that Armitage deciphered, actually dated November 26, 1916, proved highly startling and disquieting. It was written, he remembered, by a child of 3.5 who looked like a lad of 12 or 13. Today I learned the Aklo for the Sabbath. It ran, which did not like, it being answerable from the hill and not from the air. That upstairs more ahead of me than I thought it would be, but it's not like to have much earth brain. Should Elam Hutchins call Jack when he want to bite me? Elam says he would kill me if he does. I guess he won't. Grandfather kept me saying that the Dole formula last night, and I think I saw the inner city of the 2 magnetic poles. She'll go to the poles when the earth is cleared off, but I can't break through with the Dole Hana formula when I commit it. They from the air told me that the Sabbath, that it will be a few years before I can clear off the earth, but I guess Grandfather will be dead by then. So she'll have to learn all the angles of the planes and all the formulas between the Ur and the Gur. I don't know if I did that right. Well, you can't just put sounds together and expect it to make a sound. They from the outside will help, but they cannot take the body without human blood. That upstairs will have the right cast. I can see it a little when I make the Yorish sign or blow the power of Ibn Ghazi at it, and is near like them at May Eve on the hill. The other face may wear off some, but I wonder how I should look when the earth is cleared and there are no earth beings on it. He that came with the Aklo Sabbath said I might be transfigured. There being much of outside to work on. It sounds like he is planning to kill everyone on the earth. Call me crazy. Morning found Dr. Armitage in the cold sweat of terror and frenzy of wakeful concentration. Oh, I got a Discord. What a loser. Hold on. Okay. He had nervously telephoned his wife he would not be home, and when she brought him a breakfast from the house, he could scarcely dispose of a mouthful. All that day he read on, now and then halted maddeningly, as a reapplication of the complex key became necessary. Why is my Discord on in streamer mode? Okay, I think I set it so I can get notifications to streamer mode. Lunch and dinner were brought to him, but I only ate the smallest fraction of either. Towards the middle of the night, he drowsed off in his chair, and soon woke up in a tangle of nightmares almost as hideous as the truths and menaces to man's existence that he had uncovered. On the morning of September 4th, Professor Rice and Dr. Morgan insisted on seeing him for a while. Departed trembling and ashen gray. That evening he went to bed, but slept only fitfully. Wednesday, the next day, he was back at the manuscript and began to take copious notes from the current sections and from those he had already deciphered. In the small hours of that night, he slept a little in an easy armchair in his office, but was at the manuscript again before dawn. Sometime before noon, his physician, Dr. Hartwell, called to see him and insisted that he cease work. He refused, intimating that it was of vital importance for him to complete the reading of his diary, promised an explanation in due course of time. That evening, just as twilight fell, he finished his terrible perusal and sank back exhausted. His wife, bringing him dinner, found him in a half-comatose state, but he was conscious enough to warn her off with a sharp cry when he saw her eyes wandering towards the notes he had taken. Weakly rising, he gathered up the scribbled papers and sealed them off in a great envelope, which he immediately placed in the inside coat pocket. Its sufficient strength to get home, was so clearly in need of medical aid that Dr. Hartwell was summoned at once. So the doctor put him to bed. He could only mutter over and over again, "But what in God's name can we do?" Dr. Armitage slept, but he was partly delirious the next day. He made no explanations to Hartwell, but in his calmer moments spoke to an imperative need of a long conference with Rice and Morgan. His wilder wanderings were very startling indeed, including frantic appeals that something in a boarded-up farmhouse be destroyed, fantastic references to some plan for the extirpation of the entire human race and all humans and vegetable life from the earth by some terrible elder race of beings from another dimension. He would shout that the world was in danger, since the elder things wished to strip it and drag it away with the solar system and cosmos of matter into some other plane, or phase of entity from which it had fallen, vigitillions of eons ago. At other times he would call for the dreaded Necronomicon in the Demonolatria of Remigius, which he seemed hopeful of finding some formula to shake the peril he conjured up. Stop them, he would say. Those Whateleys meant to let them in. The worst of all is left. Tell Rice and Morgan we must do something. It's a blind business, but I know how to make the powder. It hasn't been fed since the 2nd of August, when Wilbur came here to his death, and at that rate. But Armitage had a sound physique despite his 73 years. Oh, he's 73 years old? Slept off his disorder that night without developing any real fever. He woke late Friday, clear of head, though sober, I think it's sober, right? Not sober. With a gnawing fear and tremendous sense of responsibility. Saturday afternoon, he felt able to go to the library and summon Rice and Morgan for a conference. For the rest of the day and evening, that three men tortured their brains in a wildest speculation and the most desperate debate. Strange and terrible works were drawn voluminously there, from the stacked shelves in the secure places of storage. Diagrams and formula were copied with feverish haste and bewildering abundance. Skepticism there was none. All three had seen the body of Wilbur Whately as it lay on the floor in a room at that very building. After that, not one of them could feel even slightly inclined to treat the diary as a madman's raving. Opinions were divided as to notifying the Massachusetts State Police, and the negative finally won. There were things involved which simply could not be believed by those who had not seen a sample. This indeed was made clear by certain subsequent investigations. Late at night, the conference disbanded without having developed a definite plan. But all day Sunday, Armitage had been busy comparing formula, mixing chemicals obtained from the college laboratory. The more he reflected on the hackish diary, the more he inclined to doubt the efficiency of any material agent in stamping out the entity which Wilbur Whately had left behind him. The earth-threatening entity, which, unknown to him, was to burst open in a few hours to become the memorable Dunwich horror. Monday was a repetition of Sunday with Dr. Armitage, for the task in his game required an infinity of research and experiment. Well, that's a lot of... infinity, that's a lot of research and experiment. You know? Further cancellation of the monstrous diary brought about various changes of plan. He knew that even in the end, a large amount of uncertainty must remain. By Tuesday, he had a definite line of action mapped out. He believed he would try a trip to Dunwich within a week. Then on Wednesday, the great shock came. Tucked obscurely away in a corner of the Arkham Advertiser was a fictitious little item from the Associated Press, telling what a record-breaking monster that the bootleg whiskey of Dunwich had raised up. Armitage, half stunned, could only telephone for Rice and Morgan. Far into the night they discussed. The next day was a whirlwind of preparation on the part of all of them. Armitage knew he would be meddling with terrible powers. It saw that there's no other way to annul the deeper and more malign meddling which others had done before him. Let me take a drink. It's chapter 9 now. Finally morning, Armitage, Rice, and Morgan set out by motor for Dunwich, arriving at the village about 1 in the afternoon. The day was pleasant, but even in the brightest sunlight, a kind of quiet dread and portent seemed to hover above the strangely domed hills and the deep shadowy ravines of the stricken region. Now and then on some mountaintop, a gaunt circle of stones could be glimpsed against the sky. From the air, a hushed thread of Osborne's story that they knew something hideous had happened, soon learned of the annihilation of Elmer Fry house and family. Throughout the afternoon, they rode around Dunwich, questioning the natives concerning all that had occurred, seeing for themselves the rising pangs of horror, the Fry ruins, with its lingering traces of the tarry stickiness, blasphemous tracks to the Fry house, the wounded steps of Bishop Cattle, the enormous swaths of disturbed vegetation of various places. The trail up and down Sentinel Hill seemed to Armitage of almost cataclysmic significance. He looked long at the sinister altar-like stone on the summit. At length, the visitors, apprised of any part of a party of state police which had come from Aylesbury the morning in response to the first telephone reports of the Fry tragedy, decided to seek out the officers and compare notes as far as practicable. This, however, they found more easily planned than performed, since no sign of the party could be found in any direction. There had been 5 of them in the car, and the car stood empty near the ruins of the Fry yard. The natives, all of which talked with policemen, seemed at first as perplexed as Armitage and his companions. Then old Sam Hutchins thought of something and turned pale, nudging Fred Fry and pointing to the dank, deep hollow that yawned close by. "God!" he gasped. "I tell him not to go down into the glen, and I never thought nobody'd do it, with the chacks and on that smell and the whippoorwills all screaming down there in the dark noonday." A cold shudder ran through natives and visitors alike, and every ear seemed strained into the kind of instinctive unconsciousness listening. Armitage, now that he had actually come upon the horror and its monstrous work, trembled with the responsibility he felt to be his. Night would soon fall, and it was then that the mountainous blasphemy lumbered upon its eldritch course. Oh no. Negotium per polans in tenebris. The old librarian rehearsed the formula he had memorized, clutched the paper containing the alternative ones he had not memorized. He saw his electric flashlight was in the working order. Rice beside him took from a valise of metal sprayer to the sort used in combating insects. Whistle Morgan uncased the big game rifle in which he relied, despite his Coley's warnings that no material weapon could be of help. I mean, you'd rather bring a gun, like, you know, to prove that it doesn't work. Armitage, having read the hideous diary, knew painfully well what kind of manifestation to expect, but he did not add to the threat of the Dunwich people by giving any hints or clues. He hoped that it might be conquered without any revelation into the world of the monstrous thing it had escaped. As the shadows gathered, the natives commenced to disperse homeward, anxious to bar themselves indoors, despite the present evidence that all human locks and bolts were useless before they could bend trees and crush homes when it shows. They shook their heads at the visitors' plans to stand guard at the Fry ruins near the glen, but as they left, they little expected to have ever seen the watchers again. There were rumblings under the hills that night. The whippoorwills piped threateningly. Once in a while, a wind, sweeping up from the cold spring glen, would bring a touch of ineffable feather to the heavy night air, such a feather as all 3 of the watchers had smelled once before. When they stood above a dying thing that had passed for 15 years and a half as a human being. But the look for terror did not appear. Whatever was down there in the glen was biding its time. Armitage told his colleagues it would be suicidal to try to attack it in the dark. Morning came wanly, the night sound ceased. It was a grey, bleak day, with now a drizzle of rain, and heavier clouds seemed to be piling themselves up upon the hills to the northwest. The men from Arkham were undecided what to do. Seeking shelter from the increasing rainfall beneath one of the few undestroyed dry elbows, they debated the wisdom of waiting, or of taking the aggressive and going down into the glen in quest of their nameless, monstrous quarry. The downpour waxed in heaviness. Distant peals of thunder sounded from far horizons. Sheet lightning shivered, and then a forky bolt flashed near at hand, as if descending into the cursed glen itself. The sky grew very dark. The watchers hoped that the storm would prove a short, sharp one followed by clear weather. It was still gruesomely dark when, not much over an hour later, a confused babble of voices sounded down the road. Another moment brought to view a frightened group of more than a dozen men, running, shouting, and even whimpering hysterically. Someone in the lead began sobbing out words, and the arc of men started violently when the words developed a coherent form. "Oh my God, my God!" the voice choked out. "It's a-going again! This time by day! It's out! It's out and moving this very minute! And only the Lord knows when it'll be all on us all." The speaker panted into silence, but another took up his message. "Nigh on an hour ago, Zeb Whately here heard the phone ringing, and it was Miss Corey, George's wife that lived down by the junction. She says the hired boy Luther was out driving in the cows from the storm out to the big bolt, when he sees all the trees abandoned at the mouth of the glen, opposite side to this. It smelled the same awful smell that he smelled when he found the big tracks this Monday morning. And she says there was a swishing lapping sound, more nor what the bending trees and bushes could make. And all of a sudden the trees along the road began to get pushed one side. There was an awful stomping and splashing in the mud. But mind ye, Luther, he didn't see nothing at all, only just the bending trees and underbrush. That further ahead where Bishop's Brook goes under the road, he heard an awful creaking and straining on the bridge, since he could tell the sound of wood is starting to crack and split. And all the whiles, he had never seen a thing, only them trees and bushes a-bending. And when the swishing sound got very far off, on the road towards Wizard Whiteley's at Sentinel Hill, Luther had the guts to step up what he'd heard it fussed and looked at the ground. It was all mud and water, and the sky was dark, and the rain was wiping about the tracks about as fast as it could be. But beginning at the glen mouth, where the trees been moved, there was still some of them awful prints big as barrels like you'd seen Monday. At this point, the first excited speaker interrupted. "But that ain't the horrible trouble now. That was only the start. Zebby here is calling folks up, and everybody was listening in when a call from Seth Bishop's cut in. His housekeeper Sally was carrying out on fit to kill. She just seen the trees abandoned beside the road, since there's a kind of mushy sound, like an elephant puffing and treading, heading for the house. Then she up and spoke as sudden of a fearful smell, and says her boy Chancey was a screaming as hell as just like he smelt up to the Whately winds Monday morning. And the dogs were all barking and whining awful. I got more than half of that, I guess, but still. And then she let out a terrible yell. And since the shed down the road there just caved in like the storm had blown it over. Only the wind wasn't strong enough to do that. Everybody was a-listening, and ye could hear lots of folks in the wire gasping. All to Unc Sally, she yelled again. It's just the front yard picket fence just crumpled up, though there wasn't no sign of what done it. And everybody on the line could hear Chancey and old Seth Bishop yelling, too, and Sally was shrieking about that something heavy had struck the house. Nor lightning nor nothing, but something heavy against the front. It kept launching itself on again, though you couldn't see nothing about the front windows. And then... Lens of fright deepened on every face. Robert Eyes, shaken as he was, barely poised enough to prompt the speaker. And then Sally she yelled about, "Oh help! The house is a-caving in!" And on the wire you could hear a horror of horrible crashing, and a whole flock of screaming, just like when Elmer Fry's place was shook, only worse. The man paused, and another of the crowd spoke. That's all. Not a sound nor squeak over the phone after that. Just still like. Without her, they got out Fords and wagons and rounded up as many able-bodied men folks we could get at Corey's place. Come up here to see what ye thought it best to do. Not but I think it's the Lord's judgment for our iniquities that no mortal can ever set aside. Armitage shot that the time for positive action had come, and spoke decisively to the faltering group of frightened rustics. "You must follow it, boys." He made his voice as reassuring as possible. "I believe there's a chance of putting it out of business. You men know that those Whateleys were wizards. Well, this thing is a thing of wizardry. It must be put down by the same means. I've seen Wilbur Whately's diary and read some of the strange old books he used to read. And I think I know the right kind of spell to reset to make the thing fade away. Of course, one can't be sure, but we can always take a chance. It's invisible. I knew it would be. But there's a powder in this long-distance sprayer that might make it show up for a second. Later on, we'll try it. It's a frightful thing to have alive, but it isn't as bad as what Wilbur would have let it in if he'd lived longer. We'll never know what the world has escaped. Now we've only this one thing to fight, and it can't multiply. It can, though, do a lot of harm, so we mustn't hesitate to rid the community of it. We must follow it. The way to begin is to go to the place where it is just wrecked. Let somebody lead the way. I don't know your roads very well, but I have an idea that there might be a shorter cut across lots. How about it?" The men shuffled about a moment, then Earl Sawyer spoke softly, pointing with a grimy finger through the steadily lessening rain. "Guess you can get to Seth Bishop's quickest by cutting across the lower metal area, wading the brook at the low place, and climbing through Carrier's Mowen and timber lot beyond. That comes out on the upper road 99 cents. It'll lead to the lovely side." Armitage, with Rice and Morgan, started to walk in the direction indicated. Most of the natives followed slowly. The sky was growing lighter, and there were signs that the storm had worn itself away. When Armitage inadvertently took a wrong direction, Joe Osborne warned him and walked ahead to show the right one. Courage and confidence were mounting, though the twilight of its almost perpendicular wooded hill, which lay towards the end of their shortcut, and amongst whose fantastic ancient trees they had to scramble and sift up a ladder, put these qualities to a severe test. At length they emerged on a muddy road to find the sun coming up. They were a little beyond the Seth Bishop place now, and bent trees and hideously unmistakable tracks showed what had passed by. Only a few moments were consumed in surveying the ruins just around the bend. It was the Fry incident all over again. Nothing dead or living was found in either the collapsed shells which had been to the Bishop house and barn. No one cared to remain there amidst the stench and the tarry stickiness, but all turned instinctively to the line of horrible prints leading on towards the wrecked Whately farmhouse and the altar-crowned slopes of Sentinel Hill. As the men passed the set of Wilbur Whately's abode, they shuddered visibly. They seemed again to mix hesitancy with their zeal. It is no joke tracking down something as big as a house that cannot be seen, that one could not see, but that had all the vicious malevolence, how do we say that word, of a demon. Opposite the base of Sentinel Hill, the tracks left the road. There's a fresh bending and matting visible amongst the broad swathe, marking the monster's former route to and from the summit. Armitage produced a pocket telescope of considerable power and scanned the steep green side of the hill. Then he handed the instrument to Morgan, whose sight was keener. After a moment of gazing, Morgan cried out sharply, passing the glass to Earl Sawyer, indicating a certain spot on the slope with his finger. Sawyer, as clumsy as most non-users of optical devices, fumbled a while, eventually focused the lens while Armitage's aid. When he did so, his cry was less restrained than Morgan's had been. "God almighty! The grass and bushes are moving. It's going up, slow-like, creeping up to the top this minute. Heaven only knows what for." Then the germ of panic seemed to spread among the seekers. It was one thing to chase the nameless entity, but quite another to find it. Spells might be alright, but suppose they weren't. Voices began questioning Armitage about what he knew of the thing, and wholly out to the same experience of mankind. Okay, final chapter. I think it's chapter 10 is the last one. They're gonna kill the thing. I think they take down the thing in this one. I think in most Lovecraft things they don't, but I think this is one of the few where, the monster actually gets killed at the end. In the end, the three men from Markham, old white-bearded Dr. Armitage, stocky iron gray Professor Rice, and hey, what's Professor Rice's favorite food? He likes a good steak. What, you thought I was gonna say rice? And lean youngish Dr. Morgan ascended the mountain alone. After much patient instruction regarding its focusing and use, they left the telescope with the friendly group that remained in the road. As they climbed, they were watched closely by those among whom the glass was passed around. It was hard going, and Armitage had to be helped more than once. High above the toiling group, the great swath trembled as its heckish marker repassed with snail-like deliberateness. And it was obvious that the pursuers were gaining. Curtis Whately, the undecayed branch, was holding the telescope when the Arkham's party detoured radically from the swathe. He told the crowd that the men were evidently trying to get a subordinate peak, which overlooked the swath at the point considerably ahead of where the shrubbery was now bending. This indeed proved to be true. The party was seen to gain at the minor elevation only a short time after the invisible blast made past it. Then Wesley Corey, who had taken the glass, cried out that Armitage was adjusting the sprayer which Rice held, that something must be about to happen. The crowd stirred uneasily, recalling that this sprayer was expected to give the unseen horror a moment of visibility. Two of the three men shut their eyes. Curtis Whaley snatched back the telescope and strained his vision to the utmost. He saw that Rice, from the party's point of vantage above and beyond the entity, had an excellent chance of spreading the potent powder with marvelous effect. Those without the telescope only saw an instant flash of gray smoke cloud, a cloud about the size of a moderately large building, at the top of the mountain. Curtis, who held the instrument, dropped it with a piercing shriek into the ankle-deep mud of the road. He reeled, and would have crumpled to the ground had not two or three others seized and steadied him. All he could do was moan half inaudibly. Oh, great God. That... There's a picture. It looks pretty spooky. There's a pandemonium of questioning. Only Henry Willer thought to rescue the fallen telescope and wipe it clean of mud. Curtis was past all coherence. Even isolated replies were almost too much for him. Bigger than a barn, all made of squirming ropes. Whole thing sort of shaped like a hen's egg, bigger than anything, with dozens of legs like hard sheets that half shut up when they step. Nothing solid about it, all like jelly, made of separate wriggling ropes pushed all together. Great bulging eyes all over it, 10 or 20 mouths and trunks sticking up about all over the sides, big as stovepipes, and all a tossing and opening and shutting, all gray with kinder blue and purple rings. And oh God in heaven, that have face on top! This final memory, whatever it was, proved too much for poor Curtis, and he collapsed completely before he could say more. Fred Farr and Will Hutchins carried him to the roadside and laid him on the damp grass. Henry Wheeler, trembling, turned the rescue telescope on the mountain to see what he might. Through the lens were discernible three tiny figures, apparently running towards the summit as fast as the steep incline allowed. Only these, nothing more. Then everyone noticed a strangely unseasonable noise in the deep valley behind, even in the underbrush of Sentinel Hill itself. It was the piping of unnumbered whippoorwills, and in their shrill chorus there seemed to lurk a note of tense and evil expectancy. Earl Sawyer now took the telescope and reported the three figures as standing on the topmost ridge, virtually level with the ultrastone, but a considerable distance from it. One figure, he said, seemed to be raising its hands above his head at rhythmic intervals. And as Sawyer mentioned the circumstance, the crowd seemed to hear a faint, half musical sound from the distance, as if a loud chant were accompanying the gestures. The weird silhouette on that remote peak must have been a spectacle of infinite grotesqueness and impressiveness, but no observer was in a mood for aesthetic appreciation. "Guess he's saying the spell," whispered Wheeler as he snatched back to the telescope. The whippoorwills were piping wildly, and the singularly curious or irregular rhythm quite unlike that of a visible ritual. Suddenly the sunshine seemed to lessen without the intervals of any discernible cloud, and it's a very peculiar phenomenon. It was plainly marked by hail. A rumbling sound seemed brewing beneath the hills, mixed strangely with a concordant rumbling which clearly came from the sky. Lightning flashed aloft, and the wondering crowd looked in vain for the portents of storm. The chanting of the men from Markham now became unmistakable. You really saw through the glass that they were all raising their arms in a rhythmic incantation. From some farmhouse far away came the frantic barking of dogs. The change in the quality of the daylight increased, and the crowd gazed upon the horizon in wonder. A purplish darkness, born of nothing more than a spectral deepening of the sky's blue, pressed down upon the rumbling hills. Then the lightning flashed again, somewhat brighter than before. The crowd fancied that it showed a certain mistiness around the ultrastone on the distant hill. No one, however, had been using the telescope at that instant. The whippoorwills continued that irregular pulsation. The men of Dunwich braced themselves tensely amongst such imponderable menace that which the atmosphere seemed so charged. Without warning came those deep, cracked, vacuous vocal sounds which will neither leave the memory of the stricken group who had heard them, nor from any human throat were they born, for the organs of man can yield no such acoustic perversions. Rather would one have said they came from the pit itself. Had not been the source, had been so unmistakably the ultrastone on its peak, it's almost erroneous to call them sounds at all, since so much of their ghastly infrabass timbre spoke to dim seats of consciousness and terror far subtler than the ear. Yet one must do so, since their form is indisputably through vaguely that of half-articulate words. They were loud as the rumblings and the thunder above, which they echoed, yet did they not come from no visible being? Because imagination might suggest a conjectural source in the world of non-visible beings, that old crowd at the mountain's base huddled still closer, and once as if the expectation of a blow. Yignai, Yagsatat, hearing the hideous croaking in his face. Kill me. I'm not saying that. I got close enough. The speaking impulse seemed to falter here. There's some frightful psychic struggle were going on. Henry Woolley strained his eyes at the telescope, saw only the three grotesquely silhouetted human figures in the speak. All moved their arms furiously in strange gestures as their incantation drew near the culmination. From the black wells of acrycnotic fear or feeling, from when unplumbed gulfs or extracosmic consciousness or obscure, long-lengthened heredity, were those half-articulate thunder croaking dawn. Presently, they began to gather a renewed force and coherence as they grew in stark, uttered, ultimate frenzy. Yeah. Nah. You. Help! Father! Yog-Satath. But that was all. The prowling group in the road, still yelling in indisputably English syllables that would pour thickly and thunderously down the frantic vacancy beside the shocking ultrastone, were never to hear such syllables again. Instead, they jumped violently at the terrific report that seemed to rend the hills. The deafening, cataclysmic peal whose source, be it inner earth or sky, no hearer was ever able to place. A single lightning bolt shot from the purple zenith to the ultrastone, until a great tidal wave of viewless force and indescribable stench swept down the hill to all the countryside. Trees, grass, and underbrush were whipped into a fury. The fretting crowd of the fountain's base, weakened by the lethal fetter that seemed about to... how do you say this word? Asphyxiate them, I think? Were almost hurled off their feet. Dogs howled from the distance. Green grass and foliage wilted to a curious, sickly yellow-gray. The overfield and forest were scattered with bodies of dead whippoorwills. The stench left quickly, but the vegetation never came right again. To this day, there's something queer and unholy about the growths on and around that fearsome hill. Curtis Whately was only just regaining consciousness when the arc of men came slowly down the mountain in the beams of sunlight once more brilliant and untainted. They were grave and quiet, but seemed shaken by memories of reflections even more terrible than those which had reduced the group of natives to a state of cowed quivering. In a reply of a jumble of questions, they only shook their heads and reaffirmed one vital fact. That thing is gone forever. It has been split up, Armitage said. It had been split up into what it was originally made of. It could never exist again. It was an impossibility in a normal world. Only the least fraction was really matter in any sense we know. It was like its father. Most of it has gone back to him in some vague realm or dimension outside of our material universe. Some vague abyss out of which only the most accursed rites of human blasphemy could ever have called him for a moment on the hills. There was a brief silence, and in that pause, the scattered senses of poor Curtis Whately began to knit back into the sort of continuity, so that he put his hands on his head with a moan. Memory seemed to pick itself up where it had left off. The horror of the sight which had prostrated him bursting upon him again. Oh my God, that half face. That half face on the top. That face with the red eyes and crinkling albino hair, no chin, like the Whateleys. It was an octopus, centipede, spider kind of thing. There was a half-shaped man's face on top of it. It looked like Wizard Whately's, only it was yards and yards across. He paused exhausted, as the whole group of natives stared in the bewilderment, not quite crystallized with fresh terror. Only old Zebulon Whately, who wanderingly remembered ancient things, but who had been silent heretofore, spoke aloud. 15 years gone, he rambled. He had old Whately say as how someday he would hear a chat of Lavinies calling his father's name on top of Sentinel Hill. But Joel Osborne interrupted him to question that Archimedes. What was it anyhow? Whatever did young Wizard Whately calling it out the air come from? Armitage chose his words carefully. It was, well, it's mostly a kind of force that doesn't belong in our part of space. A kind of force that acts and grows and shapes itself by other laws than those of our sort of nature. We have no business calling in such things from outside. Only very wicked people and very wicked cults ever tried to. There's some of it in Wilbur Whately himself. Enough to make a devil and a precautious monster of him. To make his passing out a pretty terrible sight. I'm going to burn his accursed diary. If your men are wise, you'll dynamite the altar stone up there, and pull down all the rings of standing stones in the other hills. Things like that brought down the beings those Whateleys are so fond of. The beings they are going to let intangibly to wipe out the human race and drag the earth off to some nameless place for some nameless purpose. But as to this thing we've just sent back, the Whateleys raced it for a terrible part in the doings that were to come. It grew fast and big for the same reason that Wilbur grew fast and big. But it beat him because it had a great share of the outsideness in it. You didn't ask how Wilbur called it out of the air. He didn't call it out. It was his twin brother, but it looked more like the father than he did. Hey, that's just the last line. I got spoiled. I spoiled you all. Well, that's the Dunwich horror. Looks like this goes on for about 2 hours. Well, that was pretty fun. I liked it. Lovecraft's a unique author, I guess you could say. I mean, Urobuchi is a pretty unique author. I'm gonna go and hurry up and upload this, so it'll still be April Fools. I think I'm gonna render it and just like do some stuff. But I'll see you guys next time. I'm not really against doing another read through like this, but I don't really think I will, just because that was weird. So I'll see you guys next time with some more videos. I'll see you guys then. Bye.